Now we've lost our bassist. I think Bill might be kicking this one off. Hey, Bill, did you see that it says your name is Tim Hemingway on the screen?
It does say, because we're using your account, so I am not Tim Hemingway. I am,
maybe
as some of you know, I am Reverend Bill. Yeah, right. So you get to be Tim, and I get to be Tim. We have two Tims. So welcome to another episode. Well, is this now the podcast formerly known as Two Old Guys and a Middle-Aged Guy Talk About Guitars and Gear and Stuff?
Yeah. We used to have two old guys and a middle-aged guy, but then one of our old guys died. Well, at least his podcast career died. So
okay.
Rest in peace, Scott, and your podcast career. We still love you, but you are dead to us.
Yeah, right. It's my fault.
Just kidding. We're friends.
Yeah. No, and I told Scott the same thing. It's my fault. My life has been completely upended since December, and so we were not able to stay on a schedule. And Scott plays in like 3 different tribute bands, and so his life is on a schedule. So we're doing some rebranding, which we can talk about in a minute, but first we do have a guest with us tonight who may be with us more than once. We'll see how it goes. Everybody say hello to Ian Hammer. Ian.
Hi, Ian.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
So, just by way of introduction, Ian is a really great guitar player who I played with for a while and was actually introduced to via a mutual friend of ours who is sadly no longer with us. Not just his podcast career. And yeah, it's probably too early for jokes still, but no, I think he would have appreciated them.
A little.
Totally. Anyway, and was actually introduced to me as an agent, and I didn't know he was actually a guitar player for quite some time, and he plays me under the table, so I simultaneously admire him and hate his fucking guts. So there you go.
Pretty normal relationship in this day and age.
Yeah.
With that, now we have to put the explicit warning on this one. Thanks, Bill.
Sorry. I'll go back in and I'll bleep it out. Maybe. Okay, so we're gonna go.
Do we have to adhere to a PG rating, Bill?
We try to keep it like a PG-13 rating.
Yeah. Okay. I just blew that. Now wait a second, Scott.
But Scott never followed that either. So.
All the time. let's make that clear. So
yeah.
So we're talking about doing some things differently than we've done it in the past. We usually just get on here and talk about gear and stuff and act like idiots for an hour. But we're actually,
we will continue to act like idiots for an hour. Don't
absolutely
mistake
correct.
that. We will be idiots for an hour. Absolutely.
Just maybe with a little bit more of a purpose or a stated purpose. Whether we'll be able to stick to it.
That would actually be a big title for the podcast, Idiots with a Purpose.
Ooh, I kind of like that. We may steal that.
I know.
So anyway, we're going to start off with our guest Ian here, and we're going to just pepper you with questions nonstop, kind of about your musical journey and how you got to where you're at. And I mean, you are a dude of a certain age, along with the rest of us, and you're still playing after all this time. And come on, you're not that far. You just had a kid graduate from high school. I don't want to hear it.
I did actually. Can I just jump in here and just sorry, Ian, I don't want to like steal like all the talk time from you, but you'll find out from me and Bill we will anyway.
Yeah.
No. As Bill and I got talking with Scott, deciding, and Scott may come back and do some guest appearances, he's always welcome back. We love Scott. But we realize that you're probably all sick of just hearing me and Bill talk about what me and Bill are interested in. And so part of the reason for inviting Ian tonight and as we have guests in the future is we want to talk to other musicians. We want to hear their stories. We want to learn about them and just kind of find out like why they play, like what got them interested in music, why they're interested today, what they're doing with it, like, from all different aspects. And so that's, we think that could be more fun to listen to, more interesting, and, we might learn some cool stuff along the way. So
well, we hope so anyway.
With that, now we can go just bug Ian with all the questions.
So Ian, why don't you start out by kind of introducing, I know you're from North Carolina. We've talked a little bit about kind of how you got into music in the past, but why don't you kind of give us a little basic rundown of that?
Well, how do I start? I was at the World's Fair in 1963 as a really young kid with my dad, my family. And believe it or not, one of the main reasons I got involved in music is my dad took me to the men's room, and standing in front of my dad at the urinal was a very famous composer who I'm trying to remember his name, the guy that did Grand Canyon Suite, American composer anyway. And he's singing along, kind of humming along with the rhythm of him peeing in the urinal. And my dad smiles and says to me, some people are so musical that they just hear music everywhere. And I thought that was the coolest statement ever. And it just, ever since that time, I was always looking for musical ideas. And so I think I was 9 or 10, and I talked my dad into buying me a guitar. And then my next door neighbor, or my neighbor behind me, was my age, and we started a band. We were maybe 11 or 12, and then the Beatles came on the scene, and we just kind of went from there. So believe it or not, that's the honest to God reason that I kind of got interested in music.
And I have never heard that story. That is, I can't come up.
The guy's name. He was a really Leonard Bernstein. That's who it was.
So you were, wait a second, you were standing watching Leonard, well, not watching, but you were watching Leonard Bernstein's back as he was peeing.
Right. And he was humming along with the splashing, and my dad was the one that noticed it and said, hey, isn't that amazing that this guy... Yeah.
So see, that's why we're doing this. That is an awesome story. That's way cooler than our stories.
Oh yeah, mine is nowhere near that good. Nowhere close to that good.
Mine does not involve any urine. No urinals.
Mine does involve a very drunk older woman playing the guitar in my parents' house. God, I haven't thought of that in about 1 billion years. So you got your first guitar, the Beatles came on the scene.
My buddy and I started a band, I think we were 13, and by the time we were 14, we were doing little gigs around town. And then in those days back east, there was a booking agency called Hit Attractions, and once a year they held auditions at this auditorium. And it was like 100 miles from where we lived. We got our friend's mom to drive us, and all these bands would set up in this huge auditorium room, everyone next to each other, and the guy would come by, pick up your set list and go, play this, play this, play this, play this. We were a 5-piece band, all live obviously, and we were doing stuff like Three Dog Night and Procol Harum and Jefferson Airplane, that kind of stuff. And the guy said, okay, we can book you. And we started playing fraternities and sororities up and down the East Coast. We weren't old enough to drive.
Even at 14 years old? At 14 you were doing that? Wow.
Yeah, we got our parents to drive us, and then when I was 15, a couple of our high school teachers, they had gone to like Chapel Hill or NC State, so we would talk them into driving us when it was their school. So we would go like on Friday, we'd leave at noon. They said it was a part-time job. We could leave at noon. We'd drive to Chapel Hill, play UNC Chapel Hill frat party that night, sleep in the dorm or in the frat house, get up the next morning, drive to Raleigh, play NC State that night, drive back Sunday in time to do our homework. And the deal was, as long as you kept a B average, everybody was cool. And so we did that till we graduated. And then as we got a little older, we got our licenses. We bought a van and a trailer. We had a full PA. We had lights. And we would go as far as, I think we went as far as Pennsylvania to the north and down South Carolina and below on the southern side. And yep, pretty much every weekend. And then the summers we would play the beach or different kinds of, played a couple of topless clubs when I was 16. But yeah.
Oh, at 16. Wow, there's a life-changing experience.
I never really had a job.
And that's why he's stuck with music.
Exactly. I played ice hockey, little league, and music, and I was 14. My dad said, I can't take you to all three, so pick one. And I said, well, let's see. Hockey, you don't get to keep your teeth, and I'm not that great at baseball, so music was it. So, yep.
So, when I
I love that. I was just going to say, I've always joked with my kids who are, they play guitar and they're both quite good. My two older kids are quite good now. Better than me because they can practice for hours and hours and hours a day, and I don't have that kind of time anymore. But I always tell them that the guys that get really good are the guys that aren't good at sports. I'm like, if you can't shine at sports, like in high school, whatever, you just become a really good guitarist because you got nothing else to going for you.
Pretty true.
And I sucked at sports, and I kind of sucked at guitar, too. So I was a double whammy. So when I first learned that you were a guitar player, you told me you were a classical player. So how did that come about? Because that's usually the beginning point for somebody.
Well, what happened was, all right, so I played in this band, and we played pretty much nonstop till two of the guys in the band were 1 year older than us. One got drafted, one went to college. So the band broke up, and I had joined another band, and we were supposedly getting a recording contract. We were going from where I lived in Greensboro, North Carolina, played in a band in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we were driving to Atlanta recording every weekend. And these producer guys said, oh, your band leader writes some great tunes. We think we can get you a record deal. And my dad was trying to get me to go to college. And so my dad ended up coming to me and go, he got in a big fight. And he goes, at least go to music school. And so he set me up with an interview with the conductor of the local orchestra, who was a very cool guy. And then he set me up with the guy that was dean of the music school, which at the time, North Carolina School of Music was all classical. And I went, and I was actually playing bass in the band. And the guy goes, we don't have anything for electric bass players, but we're starting a classical guitar department. Would you like to be a founding member of that class? And I said, well, okay. And believe it or not, I couldn't really read music, but I could play the song Mood for a Day from Yes and a couple of things like that. And I went and did my audition, and they couldn't believe that I could play that kind of stuff without being able to read. And so they invited me to join, and I said, well, what the hell? So believe it or not, it was one of the coolest things ever. I was resistant to it, but learning theory and how to read and the background of how so much of this stuff comes about was just an amazing addition. And I had taken theory lessons and studied under this other conductor, and I'd taken some other lessons, but going to college, I didn't graduate, but going to college was just, man, it was just so eye-opening for me. And then when I got out, I played in a couple of jazz band, and I taught quite a while, and then did theater, and then joined a bluegrass band. So it's been a very round journey.
See, I find that interesting because, not to get into all my story, but I was always around guitar because my dad was a classical guitarist.
Wow.
He released an album, probably mid-'70s, really tried to make it as a musician kind of on the classical guitar folk side of the world. So that's what I grew up with.
What was your dad's?
His name's Mike Hemingway. He was based here in Utah, actually did a bunch of work with the Osmonds, used to be a sound guy for them, all kinds of stuff like that. But anyway, that's what I was raised around, and so as soon as I could buy an electric guitar and go the opposite direction and just play loud, distorted power chords, I was like, take that, Dad! Although I actually can fingerpick pretty well because that was all I learned with. I mean, my dad, and I know Bill will agree with this, but it was like you were judged harshly in my house if you played with a pick. Like, my dad would not buy guitar picks. So I used to take the plastic thing off the top of the bread bag and use those until I had enough money to go to the guitar store and buy my own picks. And then my dad would just look at me and shake his head in disappointment.
So did you learn to read? Did you learn to read music from your dad?
No, not really. He gave me my first lesson or two and then was like, here's a chord book, good luck. And every once in a while he'd come sit down and be like, no, you play it like this. No, you want to do it like this. And so he kind of helped me. It was more, so when I was in college, I also took a lot of music classes, and that was where I learned to read music as well.
Yeah, I have a huge issue with the fact that so many teachers teach tab, and it's like teaching English but not teaching kids how to read. And Bill and I talk about this all the time because, as Bill knows, I greatly admire his literary and writing capabilities, which to me are pretty exceptional. And I equate the fact that if you can write well and speak to people, they can learn something from what you've put on a page. And I feel the same way about music. Is if you can pick up a sheet of music and either play it or read it and hear the intent, it's just such an incredible shortcut to things, and it just opens up the music world so much, and it just drives me crazy how many very talented people just resist and just go, nope, I don't want to learn to read, I don't care, and just drives me nuts. But
see, and I wish I read better. I really do.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't read that. I mean, it's
no, you read really well, Ian.
Sort of. But it's not like you can just hand me a piece. Like you handed me that Steely Dan book.
I forgot about that.
Damn near through the. And I damn near threw the thing out the window because it's written so the way 5 different people wrote the charts and stuff, and they don't make any sense to me. But like I say, it's a bit. I sit down and read through my classical books and some other stuff, and I don't know. I enjoy that a lot too, as much as improvisation and playing rock stuff and everything else.
So
I love that. I think that's awesome. Like I would say, I'm in the same boat. I wish I could read better, but I definitely can, and it. Came in really handy when my kids took like the AP music theory class in high school, because neither of them ever took band classes and really felt behind because they're both guitarists, and they would be shocked when they'd sit down and be like, Dad, what's going on here? And I'd be like, well, if you can read music and basic theory. And then they would always be like, well, I don't want to know theory because then it puts you in a box. And I'm like, no, what happens when you learn theory is then you understand how things go together. You can still break the rules, but it just fast tracks what you're doing because you know it's going to sound good. And then, it doesn't put you in a box. It helps you go much further.
Out of the box. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
yeah, speaking of boxes, I just
My brother-in-law
ordered all of the Rick Beato courses. All of them.
Oh, I've had them for a while. They're amazing, and they're so above my head.
Is it just guitar or is it theory?
No, he does.
Guitar or theory?
There's a lot. He has a lot of guitar stuff. He has like an arpeggio master class and things like that. But he has the Beato book is just theory, and he has a whole separate course. It's like theory for songwriters.
Yeah, I was going to say most of the theory that he does, he either does it on piano or guitar, or he kind of jumps back and forth between the two. So it is very much geared for guitarists to understand theory. But yeah, it's awesome. I mean, it's a lot of it's like still way above my head. That's actually like my son was really struggling with one of his music theory classes, and I gave him the Beato book, and I was like, and as soon as he looked at how Rick explains it for a guitarist, he was like, well, this totally makes sense. And I'm like, yeah, you just have to have somebody explain it with an instrument you understand so that you have the context. And so my oldest son uses it quite a bit now. After he got over I don't want to learn theory because it's going to put me in a box.
Did you give him a copy of chord chemistry?
No, I have that though because you told me to buy it probably like 10 years ago. Probably more than like 15 years ago.
Who's chord chemistry by?
Ted Green. And
I studied a couple of. You said you took a lesson from him. That's amazing.
I took 2 lessons from Ted, and it was life-changing. I remember I sat down with him the first time, and it was just in his little crappy apartment, and he had this giant oak filing cabinet right behind his chair, and he said, so what do you want to learn? Because I had to wait. I mean, I was on a waiting list for like 6 or 7 months before I could get my first lesson. And he said, so what do you want to learn? I said, well, I'm trying to, see if I can become a songwriter, and I think that knowing some more about chord voicings and chord substitution and everything would be helpful. And he turned around and he opened one of those drawers and he took out a sheet, which I still have, that was like 20 ways to play a C major triad on the fretboard. And so by extension, that's 20 ways to play anything. You know what I mean? Either by altering or extending chord tones. And it just, I mean, I'm still like I won't say I'm a hack guitarist, but I'm a moderately okay guitarist. But that really did.
You're a really good guitarist. You just are a different style. But I remember when we played together, you would come up with chords that were just astounding. You didn't know.
On Guitar George, I know all the chords.
Different. Do what?
I said on Guitar George, I know all the chords.
Awesome.
Are you referring to Tom Petty's comment on George Harrison?
No, I'm actually referring to the Sultans of Swing lyric.
Okay, I totally missed that one. I was
Check out Guitar George. He knows all the chords.
I know it. So I was going to say, what I love about this book is all the chords are like still like hand drawn in the book. I think that's amazing. No, there was when they were doing the Traveling Wilburys, there's an interview with Tom Petty. And they asked him, they said, like, who's the best guitarist you ever played with? And he said, oh, George Harrison. And he said, really? And he goes, yeah, you'd have, Traveling Wilbury, this room of, like, all rock stars, and we'd be figuring something out. And he's like, and then George would just know, like, all these variations of the chord all up and down the neck that none of us had ever seen before. And he was like, the guy was just, like, a chord encyclopedia. And so he would just, goes on this whole thing about how George Harrison was just, like, he's like, I've never known anybody who had mastered the guitar like that guy. And he'd just be like, well, you could play it like this, or you could do this, or you could do this. And everybody would just sit there and stare at him like, what is going on here? So anyway, I thought that was my Guitar George reference.
That's one of the coolest things I think about guitar is that I don't know any other instrument that has that many permutations of the same thing. I mean, in piano, you can use two hands and you can kind of leave notes out to make your voicings. But basically, a triad, they are where they are. I mean, the notes are the same every 12 notes. They just repeat them. So on the guitar, it's a really different animal, and it's can be either intimidating or enlightening depending on how you approach. But my brother-in-law, who is taking guitar lessons, and every time I try to talk to him about it, he goes, "Oh, I'm learning the cage system." And I go, "Animal."
I still don't even know what that is. I've heard of it a million times. I couldn't tell you what it was.
I could
It's
explain
kind
it
of
all
a
to you
way
right
of
now if you
drawing
wanted to
a
learn.
diagram of like a scale on the guitar, and then you call that the cage within where your notes are. But again, it doesn't teach you anything other than yes, no, and not why. So to me, it's kind of a useless, it's very limiting practice. But
I would agree with that, but I do think it's a great way for people to start to visualize the neck. So the quick version of it is you look at your pentatonic shapes, they name them after the chord shapes, so C, A, G, E, D. So that's kind of like the initial part of it, to learn to move up and down the neck. But then the other thing that you learn is if you're playing a C, well, the next C shape on the neck is an A shape. So you're going to go up to the third fret, fifth fret, and the next going to be a G shape. And so you start to learn as you're looking for chords. So it helps you start to build chords all over the neck using the C, A, G, E, D shapes. And then once again, you throw the pentatonic scales back into it, and then you can quickly learn how to do basic soloing, things like that, up and down the neck using the different shapes. That's really what it is. So
I learned from scales and chord tones. So I never.
Yeah, I mean it's just a different way of looking at like scales. It's really all it is. But I've used it quite a bit when I'm teaching people, like, because I've taught a lot of people. But when I'm teaching them like the how to play up and down the neck, it's a pretty easy way for people to grasp how to play up and down the neck, and how people can jump from being down here to being up here, and playing in the middle. People go from open to 12th fret easily, but jumping in the middle, showing how to easily jump back and forth. So anyway, that's, since you all wanted a lesson
Ian
on the
said
cage
something
system today.
interesting, and I think it's important about guitar and the fact that there are so many different ways to play any given thing. It's either awesome or intimidating. I love it because the way chords are voiced is like everything to me, and Ian kind of knows that. I'll play these weird voicings and then be very resistant to changing it because that's the way I hear a certain harmony in my head, and to me, it's one of the things that draws me to the instrument so much. So I want to make sure
that is a very important point.
Yeah. So I want to make sure we get a couple stories in that I know about. So you ended up at one point touring Asia a lot, I know, or Japan, or I think you went to China.
I was mostly in Taiwan. I mean, I spent like 5 months playing a place called the Millionaires Club, which was a hostess club. So we would play that 6 nights a week. And then every Saturday night, we would go do this show at this place called Touch Disco, which was on the 42nd floor of a huge high-rise that had like a grocery store at the bottom and offices. And what we would do is we would play hostess clubs in Japan and Taiwan. These businessmen go and they have these beautiful girls that sit with them and serve them drinks or serve them food or dance with them. And then technically, if they want to take one home afterwards, they can. But they have to take them to a hotel, and it's all very regulated and pretty safe, but they're pretty classy place. So we were there for like 5 months, and we got this gig every Saturday. We'd go to this disco, and there'd be about 2,000 18 to 25-year-olds. And since we were an American band, we would go on the 41st floor, and there was a stage with everything all set up, PA, amps and everything, drums. And we'd get there like at 1 o'clock. And when we got all ready, we'd push a button and this light would go on upstairs and the stage would go up to the next floor, the second floor, and the DJ booth would open in half. And we'd come up in the middle and we'd do like a 30-minute pop show. And there's like 2 stories of, like, I'd say thousands of kids just screaming because we're Americans in Taiwan. And then at the end of 30 minutes, we'd get back on the stage and we'd go back down.
So it's a 30-minute show?
Can I back up a quick? Like, how did you end up in Asia? How did you get there in the first place? Like, what kind of band were you playing with this point? Like, how did this happen?
I had a very successful show band. I think that at that point we were called Devotee, and we played all over the United States, Washington, Oregon, California, everywhere. And I had a manager and I had an agent, a couple of agents, and one of the agents booked a lot of groups overseas. And so he said, "Do you want to go?" And the band, "Oh, that'd be fun." So we all packed it up and flew to Asia, and we were there for 5 months, and then flew back.
So cool.
It was. I've always said I was really blessed that I was able to, for most of my life, make my living playing music. And I didn't get rich or anything, but I had some. I was hired to be Ike Turner's musical director when he got out of college. I mean, when he got out of prison, until he went back.
College, prison, come on, same thing.
Prison, well, saying it was an education, just a different.
Pretty
kind.
similar.
But yeah, I mean, it was such a different vibe back then. I mean, there was a really big music scene where you could make a living without maybe being at the very top, which kind of doesn't exist much anymore. Now we all do it because we love it, not because we're making any money. But yeah, that was very cool.
Awesome. Tell us your Frank Zappa story.
I don't know, Ian, so what other good stories do we need to hear?
Oh, wait, we need to hear the Frank Zappa story for sure.
All right, real quick. So we were there 14 or 15, and I had a band, and it was basically good friends, but it was the band that we did a lot of these colleges and stuff. And my bass player was a huge Frank Zappa fan. And in North Carolina, they had the Charlotte Jazz Festival. I might have been 15. I think we were only 14. And we found out that Frank Zappa was playing the Charlotte Jazz Festival. So happens our guitar player's mom had a best friend whose uncle was Tal Farlow. I don't know if you know who he is, one of the greatest jazz players.
Oh yeah, one of the great jazz players.
And he was at the festival. So she said, "I'll tell you what, I'll take you, if your parents will let you go, we'll go and we'll spend 2 days and we'll go to the jazz festival," thinking it'd be a good education. She didn't really get the Zappa thing, but so we go to Charlotte and we check into the hotel, which is next door to the Charlotte Coliseum. Lo and behold, that's where all the bands were staying. So we go to the coffee shop to have dinner our first night, and in the booth behind us is Frank Zappa. So my bass player, who can't control himself, leans over and starts talking to him and telling him what a big fan he is and all this stuff. And so Zappa just says, "Well, talk to me." So we just spent like an hour. And his first thing was, "Don't do drugs, don't drink." And then he says, "And don't listen to us seriously, because what we're doing here is basically more like comedy." And he says, "Do you have tickets?" And we're going, "Oh yeah, we have tickets." And he goes, "All right," he goes, "This is the best musical education you'll get. Pay attention." And we saw Tal Farlow, Fitzgerald, Duke Ellington, Unlimited. I can't remember, like probably 10 or 15 of the biggest bands, jazz groups, and then Zappa and the Mothers of Invention were the last night. So that's my Frank Zappa story. So we hung out with him that day, saw him one other time, but he was in the middle of writing 200 motels. So he spent most of the time in his hotel room. We hung out with like the Buzz and Bud Underwood and a couple of the roadies and stuff like that. Pretty cool.
That's so cool.
It was you would walk down the hall of the hotel before the show. Every door would be open, and there'd be all these people practicing, and you're just hearing, man, every kind of crazy practice routine in the world, scales, drills, vocals. Very cool.
So it sounds to me like you should have introduced Ike Turner to your friend Frank Zappa so he could have got the "Don't Do Drugs" lecture as well.
Yeah, probably so. Ike Turner was quite a bit later.
I think it may have been a little late for Ike at that point in time, unfortunately. So
I'm just trying to think of ways to help.
Years later than that.
Yeah. What was that, Tim?
I'm just trying to look for ways to help. I mean, I know this was decades ago, but, just trying to think of like maybe solutions to help prevent the next generation, right. Not that any of them will listen to this, to not do drugs. Don't do drugs, kids. Since the only kids that will listen to this are probably mine, I just got to get the plug up.
Okay, so, so you're still playing?
Me? Yeah. We played a casino gig Saturday night. It was 4 hours, 4 sets. I was like, oh my God, 9 to 1. Do not want to make a steady diet of those.
And how did you feel the next day?
Pretty beat up. Well, the problem was by the time I got home, it was almost 3 o'clock in the morning, and then I couldn't sleep in. I woke up at 8, and I'm like, okay, I'm up. So yeah, it was a long day trying to get my act together. And I think most of the band pretty much felt the same way.
So this has nothing to do with anything, but Ian, what is your favorite gear? Like, what kind of guitar do you play? Like, what's your setup with your band?
Well, I just changed my setup. I have a Hughes Kettner Tubemeister 20 tube amp with a Celestion, I think it's a vintage 30 separate, And then I have a Pod Go that I use on the effects loop just for a couple of like I have a compression setting, a chorus setting, a little bit of EQ, and then I do everything with the amp's channel switching. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with the amp, but it goes from 1 watt to 5 watts to 20 watts to no watts. I don't know. I've tried. You ask Bill. Since I just
Oh
started
yeah.
back playing about 3 years ago, and I just, man, I went through. I just could never find anything that satisfied me. I was always calling Bill, going, "What do I do next?" Well, maybe you could try.
And you didn't end up with like a Helix Stadium?
Well, you know what? As I always told Bill, I want to play guitar. I don't want to program computers for hours.
And I think that was always the biggest problem. Yeah.
I don't enjoy that part of it, and it was excruciating to me. I started off this little Digitech foot thing that had like 5 knobs, so everything was trying to figure out what, like a million things on each knob that you had to figure out where they were, which drove me nuts. And then I just bought an amp that had some built-in effects. It wasn't too complimentary, and I was playing a piece of crap old Fender's Strat. I guess it was a Mexican Strat. I didn't really have any gear. I mean, I had an old classical guitar. I had a really nice acoustic guitar. At an old Gibson 1968 ES-125. But for modern stuff, I didn't have anything. And I tried one of those monotone tube amps, which didn't really work. And I had a Line 6 amp didn't work. And then Bill turned me on to the Pod Go, which was a huge improvement, but it just always sounded too electronic, just didn't sound real to me. I finally after buying a Fender DeVille a couple of months ago, and then going, yeah, this isn't working either, I found the Tubemeister. And my brother-in-law is a luthier, so the guitar I have a Fender Player Telecaster, and then a guitar that he built me, and now we're designing a new one, but kind of a weird setup.
Hey, no, Telecasters are the best. I love Telecasters. This is the funny thing here, hearing this is, you know, Bill and I are like the opposite of what you would think. He is the one who is all into the tech, all into like because he's the old guy. He's the one who's all into the tech. He's into all the Helix. He's into all the menus. I went down that path and then sold it all. And, you know, last I counted, I probably have 60 or 70 pedals here because I just like the analog pedals. I like the simplicity of just, you know, plugging my pedal board in and just tweaking a couple of knobs.
Yes, but you have 60 or 70 of them.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have one of those interfaces where you can program different combinations of them, or is it just doing tap dance?
Yeah, I do have one of the loopers as well that I can program, I think 16 different programs into it or whatever. What I usually use it for though is I actually set it up like I'll put like my fuzz pedals in one section, I'll put my distortion in another one, I'll put my overdrives in another one, and I'll put my modulation in another one. And so when I'm playing, like I can cut different sections out completely. Mostly it's just to control the noise level because I've got so many pedals on my board that you know it's just noisy no matter what. And so by being able to cut different sections out for what I'm doing, I do have a smaller one that I use when I'm just like jamming with people or whatever, but at home I like to be able to have like, you know, 20 30 pedals on my board at any given time just for the fun of it.
Wow. So I can't I can't even think that way.
I've got a problem.
No, I think that's the thing about electric guitar players is that just like all the different ways to approach your guitar and the way you want to play it, there's also that many permutations of way you want to approach your sound.
Well,
and my thing is, and Bill knows this really well, I used to tell him all the time, I practice probably 2 to 3 hours every day, 4 to 5 days a week. But I didn't want to spend that time. I would spend 2 or 3 days trying to get 5 reasonable patches that I could go do a gig. And then I'm going, I haven't practiced a damn thing. I'm just tweaking. And that just drove me crazy. And so when with the way my setup is now, I think I have 6 basic patches on the Pod Go and the 3 settings on the amp: clean, dirty, overdrive. And then I have so I can have a chorus delay, I can have a regular delay, I can have a clean, I can have a louder clean for solos. And I think there's like one I call liquid, which is kind of a in between chorus and flanger. I have a phaser that I use because we did a disco tune and I didn't feel like doing a wah-wah pedal. So, and that's it. That's pretty much. And then I use my, you know, my guitar is pretty weird. I have 2 Seymour Duncan little 59s in the neck, in the middle, and a Jeff Beck Jr. tailpiece. They're all tapped, so they can be all single coil, all humbucker, which my new guitar is going to be basically like a Strat, I think. I mean, that's kind of what we're designing. Strat pickups. Though, Bill, as long as you're here, the noiseless Strat pickups, do you think they sound pretty similar to regular Strat pickups? Or because they have that cancellation feature, they lose some of that
I think they
quack?
lose some of that quack. I really do. To my ear,
Yeah.
at least, that they lose a little bit of that quack. But I mean, the only real Fender I have anymore is, oh, you can't see it. There's a Strat on the wall behind me, and I had, God, in the '80s, I had an American Strat. No, wait, I take it back. It was a Mexican Strat, but with an Ed Charbel paint job, like actually done by Ed, and it was a purple sunburst. And I don't even remember where I got the guitar. And then of course I really, I do stupid things, and I put I've had the 335 that's on the wall behind me since I was 16 years old, I think, and the output of the Strat was not as much as the output on the 335, so I put a preamp in the Strat to boost it up, so that, so when I was switching guitars back and forth, I could maintain some semblance of the same volume. And then I took off the pick guard and I put a mirror pick guard on it just because I thought it was cool. Yeah. And and Ian knows this really well. I think I used to drive him completely out of his gourd sometimes. I've spent a lot of time playing MIDI guitar in different permutations. I've had every system that there is. I've had Casios and Rolands and everything. And we talked about this before. I use a software system now called MIDI Guitar. That means I can get it with any of my guitars. But so this was the 80s, and it was the early versions of my soul bands of Reverend Bill and the Soul Believers, and we did not have a keyboard player because keyboard players were worth money at that point, and we weren't making any.
Right.
And so I took up MIDI guitar specifically to learn how to play organ parts on a guitar. Now, should I have just learned how to play organ? Probably. But, I understood how to,
You've
how
never
to play.
been able to haul a B3 up in the stairs in your house.
Dude, I had a C3 that I cut down and we used to carry for gigs, and I wasn't even a keyboard player. I did it so I could have something that sounded like a real organ. But I went into a music store in LA called Nadine's that is now sadly gone, and the manager there was a guy named Ed Ocean, and I needed a sound module, something that, so he and I said, I've got this Strat, and he said, and he really liked the Strat a lot. He goes, I'm going to trade you, but I'm going to keep the Strat. And I got a Proteus, an Emu Proteus out of the deal, and he said, but so that's good for you though, because if you ever want it back, it's still in the family, and I'll sell it back to you. Which never happened. Probably in the early 90s, maybe actually like around 1990, my wife and my mom tried to buy it back for me for Christmas. And Ed was like, man, it's my favorite guitar now. I can't part with it. So he made them a really screaming deal on and I think they did it because it looked similar, but so I have a Bonnie Raitt signature Strat, which is ironically kind of a Strat that was made for women. It's a little lighter body, and the inside cut is a little deeper to make room for a boob, but it's got those Texas Special pickups on it, right. And to me, those sound like real Strat pickups, and so it's hard for me. Even the main guitar that I play, which has a single coil in the middle, and everything can be tapped, and I can get a quasi-Strat sound. It's not really a real Strat sound, but I can get something close. It's just not the same as that. You know what I mean? As much as I love Neil and I love his pickups, there's something about those Texas Specials. They're just...
the guitar I'm building, that's where I'm trying to figure out what pickups to put in it. And it's like, I can't tell you how many different pickups that I've listened to, and I cannot tell. There are subtle differences, but it's just maddening. So I've listened to Sir, to Lawler, Mojo Tone to Seymour Duncan to Fender pickups, a couple of other off brands. I think the Texas Blues are pretty cool. I think the basic Fender staggered SS1 type pickups to me sound as good as almost. And then of course, you have to like the one problem with my guitar is the middle pickup is not reverse wound, reverse polarity. So that definitely negates some of the quack.
It absolutely
I get
does.
some, but not as much.
I was going to say, so I do think I love the Texas Specials. I think they are fantastic Fender pickups. And I do feel like in a Strat, I'm not a fan of the noiseless because if you have the reverse wound middle pickup, you can use the second or fourth position. You have your noise canceling. You're good to go. So I don't really see the point of them there, but I'm going to disagree a little bit. I actually love the vintage noiseless in a Telecaster because I don't like the middle position of a Telecaster. I'm either bridge or neck pickup, and they're just too noisy if you're in any kind of environment where you're playing loud. So I use them on a Telecaster, and I love them.
Even
So,
not
there you go.
playing
My
loud.
my 2
Telecaster's a
cents.
player Telecaster, so it has 3 pickups.
What was that?
So it has the lipstick pickup in the front in the neck position, and then it's got a basic Stratocaster pickup in the middle position, and then it's got another kind they call it a Fender Special in the tail position.
So it's like a Nashville style?
It's called the Nashville Player.
Okay.
It's a 12.5 radius instead of 9.5. But it's a great sounding guitar, but it doesn't have a tremolo on it, and it's still for playing like I use it on some country stuff we do. It's got that really nice bitey sound, and it's cool for some rock. But for to me, I don't know. I was a Gibson guy for a long time and Ibanez, but I don't know. In my heart, I just love that real quack Fender sound. That's just it for me. And then you got so many. I can use the middle pickup for like a real bitey rock sound. With the Q's Kettner, to me, my whole band, the first night I had it, they're just going, "Oh my God, that sounds like a real guitar." And I was just like, "Yeah, okay, I agree with you 100%." It's just been. I used it for the first time live on Saturday night and on stage, and it was just very happy.
Well, that's very cool.
What kind of guitar do you mostly play, Tim?
What do I mostly play? Oh, it depends on the day of the week. So honestly, my most played is actually probably a Mexican Telecaster that I bought probably close to 20 years ago that has been Frankensteined and had all kinds of different pickups and stuff on it. I'm obsessed with the neck. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I also have, you can kind of see the edge of it, a Chinese-built Epiphone Casino, and everybody says the Chinese ones aren't as good. They're full of crap. That guitar is incredible. The funny thing is those are 2 of the probably least expensive guitars I own, and I play them all the time. And then the other one that I am just absolutely in love with, and it makes me sad they don't make them anymore, is it's a Taylor SB1. So it's from the 3 years where Taylor made solid body electric guitars, which the SB stands for. It looks like a kind of a hybrid Les Paul SG shape. It's got too many humbuckers on it, but it's got like a 5-way switching, so it has all kinds of weird configurations between humbuckers and single coils and it does all kinds of weird stuff. But it is
I'm not even familiar with those.
What was that?
I said I'm not even familiar with those.
Yeah.
I did not realize they made those.
They made them for about 3 years is all, and the neck on it is the most comfortable neck I've ever played. I can get basically any sound I want out of it. It can sound like a Tele. It can sound like a Strat. It can sound like a Les Paul. I mean, it is one of the most innovative, like well thought out electric guitars I've ever played. I would say it can run circles around all my other American built guitars. I'm obsessed with it. I don't know if you can tell that. I love it. If I only had one electric guitar, that would be the one I have.
Wow.
So, and then amp wise, I love Vox. I have an AC-15. Although you can see the Vox Super Beetle Mini in the background, which sounds so good. I just bought it because it looked cool, and I got it for cheap. It is the greatest practice jam amp. It sounds incredible.
Yeah.
It blows my mind, and it takes pedals great too. So when I want to be loud, I play the AC-15. When I don't want to be loud, I play the Super Beetle Mini, and there's probably a couple other amps.
Do you put your pedal board in front of your amp or through the effects loop?
That depends. Modulation, reverb, things like that, I will put through the effects loop. Currently, I am obsessed with the Keeley Zoma. It's a reverb tremolo pedal.
I didn't even know about that one.
It's so good. I love it. It is. It does a spring reverb and a plate reverb, and both of them sound incredible. And then has a couple different variations of tremolo, and I use it instead of my amp reverb and tremolo. It's amazing. So I'll run like that through the effects loop, or if I'm doing anything chorus wise or anything, I'll put that in the effects loop. But any drives, fuzz, overdrive, anything, I'm gonna put in the front of the amp.
I tried running my Pod Go in the front of the amp, but when I got my Hughes Kettner, I stuck it through the effects loop, and it made so much of a difference. It doesn't overdrive things to the point of being nasty, but it's just, 'cause again, I'm not using any drive on it. I'm just using, a couple of different effects on it. So it's just kind of, the one thing Hughes Kettner doesn't have is reverb. So I mostly just use the 163 spring reverb, which to me is just a nice wide open kind of thing. But now Bill builds patches like NASA. But
Go ahead.
no, what I was going to say is, I think what's astounding is, I remember even before you got the Stadium, just your Helix, you would come over and have these patches that really did sound like real amps or, pedals and stuff. And I could never figure out how to do that. I mean, I remember I tried the Head Rush. Remember, the Head Rush pedal board? And I bought it thinking, okay, well, this will be, you kind of think of it as foot pedals, and it's more analog in design, even though it's definitely digital. And I must have spent a week, and I ended up with the same four shitty sounds. Excuse my French on the podcast, but
That's all right.
the same sounds that I was fighting with on the Pod Go, and then I tried Bill's Helix for a while. He had a second one, and everything ended up sounding the same. I mean, they were usable, but they just weren't. They didn't breathe to me. They just didn't open up. And I think it's just because I don't understand how that works the way you guys do digitally. I mean, I know guys that have the Freemans, and I know guys that have. Go ahead.
This is going to sound like sacrilege, because I did get the Helix Stadium, and I like it a lot. But for the first time, the Helix has a Boogie Mark II model, which they've never had before. They had a Mark IV, but the Mark IV is a very aggressively voiced Boogie. I mean, it's not a rectifier series. It's not quite that far in that direction, but it's like one step below it, and it was always just a little too gnarly for me. And but with the Stadium now, they have Boogie 2C Plus model, and so I have access to all these things, but I find myself using four: a Princeton, an AC30, that Boogie, and a Deluxe, an old, like a 52 Deluxe, and or 62 Deluxe. And but in trying to learn how to write the patches better, I actually turned to ChatGPT, and I would say, okay, this is the sound I'm looking for, and based on like a specific player or an artist. Yeah, and it got me 90% of the way there. Every single time I asked. Every single time.
It was like it left a lot of stuff out. It would tell me to set parameters that weren't available.
Oh yeah, and I would have to go in and say, okay, that parameter is not on here, and it would go back and go, you're right, it's not. You have this instead. And so I'd have to do some correcting, but I mean, I was just recording last night, and a song that Ian's played called "I'll Shine On," and trying to find the right sound, and I ended up with a pretty close approximation of Keith Richards' kind of mid-70s boogie tone, and it's perfect. You know what I mean? It's just that perfect rhythm, because I'm not playing any lead.
Post-recording or pre-recording? But are you doing it pre? Are you putting the Helix in front when you record, or are you putting it in afterwards?
So we are. Yes, I know exactly what you mean, and we're actually doing it both ways. I'm playing with another guitarist guy by the name of Guy Amato, who's just ridiculously musical and plays a Strat and a Tele, and both of us, so he has a Quilter, which is, the Pat Quilter QSC. He has kind of a analog amp on a pedal board kind of thing that he uses, which is basically just like, he has a Deluxe reverb at home, and it's basically like his Deluxe. So we are recording in the box that way, but we are also splitting signals so that when we record a track, we have, I have the sound of my Helix, he has the sound of his Quilter, but we're also recording a direct track at the same time, so that if we want to go back in and do it with software later, we can. So it's just giving us options, but we haven't gone to those direct tracks yet. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, it's just the
Have you sampled anything? Have you done any samples with your Helix Stadium?
I have not, but I'm arranging a sleepover at Tim's house to sample a bunch of his pedals at some point in time, because they have added that capability now. It is a real thing, and I would love to. I mean, he's got a couple of Vox amps and pedals that I would love to sample and see how that goes, but I haven't done it yet. And the funny thing is,
there's this amazing. But you have to say what they are though, Bill. There's this amazing company out of Spain. They're called Acklum. Yeah. And what they do is they buy obscure vintage gear from the 60s, and then they reverse engineer it and build it into a pedal form. So the first one I got from them was the Dr. Robert, which is designed to sound like the Revolver sound. So they use the Vox UL730, which they only made like 100 of. And instead of tubes, they use JFETs for it, but they essentially built the amp into because it's a solid state amp, it wasn't a tube at all. It was all solid state amp that the Beatles were using, and they built it into a pedal form, and it is spot on. They also got Klaus Voormann to design the pedal, so it looks really cool. And then they did a second one called the Mocker, which was the fuzz circuit from that amp, which is like the fuzz circuit you'd know off of like Sgt. Pepper. But they've done a Pete Townsend one, they've done an Eric Clapton one. They've done another Beatles one now, the Go Rocky Go, which is the White Album sound. So, I mean, if you want to sound like those albums, they are incredible. They're not cheap, but they're amazing. Anyway, Bill wants to model them now.
I do. I've been a Vox fan for a million years, but I've never owned a real Vox amp. It's something that has always kind of escaped me, and
you should at least buy one of those just because they're fun, and they're not that expensive.
I tried it on the Pod Go, and it sounded like terrible. I still may do it one of these days. I always remember playing my guitar through an old Fender Bassman with a 215 and 50-watt Fender Bassman with a 215 cabinet, and they just had, that and a Fender guitar. They just had that.
But people forget that's what Marshalls were. Marshalls were modified Bassmans from the very beginning. Before they kind of became what they were. But just like the Boogies were modified Princetons. And then,
well, I was going to say the Marshalls were modified Bassmen, except for they're using crappier components because they couldn't get the good components they're using in the U.S. They had cheaper components in the U.K., and that's actually what created their sound. That's why they were more distorted, higher gain, things like that. It wasn't intentional at first. That's what they had available. Is they tried to reverse engineer or build a Bassman, and then you had guys like Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix who were picking those up and then cranking it and really creating that sound. So.
And I've never been a Marshall guy ever.
But I don't love them. I'm much more of a Fender Vox. Those are the ones I like.
Although
I
will
admit,
Duncan
convertible for years, and that was a great amp.
And remember, I brought that over when I had ChatGPT tell me how to do a Seymour Duncan convertible.
Yep.
And you said it's not that far off.
I almost bought one, but it's just switching all those preamps and 1,000 tubes, and then you got to buy another set of speakers. I'm very happy with the Hughes Kettner, but the Seymour Duncan, that was I had one of those, got for years, and it really did sound, for that kind of rock stuff, it was great.
Well, I remember I was really surprised because I remember bringing that up to Larry, and he said that he had one too when he was a teenager.
I didn't realize he had one.
Huh, what was that? Yeah, he had one too, and he said
I didn't realize he had one.
Yeah, he said it was probably the greatest amp he ever had. But then he had to go buy a Marshall because, he wanted to be a rock star, and he had to have a Marshall to be a rock star. So, which sounds like something he'd say.
I get it.
So there you go. Well, guys, we were going to talk about music we have discovered in the last year, and we are already at an hour. So I think we should probably maybe push that off for another time.
I agree.
Just because nobody's going to watch it past an hour anyway. If they get,
we'll be lucky if they get past. I was going to say we'd be lucky if they get past like the first 10 minutes, but we did have the urinal story at the beginning, so they may actually stick around.
So anyway,
Thank you
just
for
to wrap
that,
things
Ian.
up. Yeah, and Ian, thanks for coming on, and hopefully we can do this again.
Well, it was
I
a
did,
pleasure. Nice meeting you, Tim, and that was a lot of fun.
yeah. We'll see if we can't do this again at some point. And we didn't even get to talk about Angine de Poitrine, which we don't need to do because everybody
Can't
already
believe
has.
you knew them.
Oh my
I
God!
don't even know who that is. I'm going to be honest with you. So let's just cut right now
Okay.
because I'm not sure I want to know.
You'll have to send that to him.
I was also going to say, Bill, we didn't even talk bagpipes this week.
Oh my God! No bagpipe conversation. How are we gonna? How are we
No
gonna
bagpipe
live?
conversation? I don't
Okay,
know.
we definitely have to come back and revisit, and you need to go listen to Angine de Poitrine because I my keyboard player Bill McClurk sent me. He turned me on to it. He sent me this link, and he used to produce records for this guy named Zachas that were just way, way, way out there. And he said if my friend Steve Zachas was still around, he would be all over this. And I was like, okay, Bill sends me weird stuff all the time. I'll go check this out. And the first comment on the YouTube page sums it all up. It was a guy who said, I am completely enthralled by whatever the F this is because it's just so far out there. Just
It's
think,
microtonal music.
yes,
And then
microtonal
really
math rock.
rhythms.
Yeah,
Yep.
loop-based microtonal math rock with two guys, one playing a double neck bass and guitar with 23 frets per octave on both instruments, and a drummer, and they wear weird paper mache masks, and yeah, it's awesome, and I
And
can't
it
believe you
still
don't
kind
already
of
know about it.
works. That's what's
Oh,
so
it's
weird.
like
It
I
kind
have.
of works.
It does. It's
Hey,
just it's ridiculous.
I thought we weren't even going to talk about this. We're now
I know
like 5
we
minutes
weren't
over.
going to,
See what
but
you've done,
now
Bill.
but now we've gone 5 minutes over the hour. Okay, Ian, thanks for coming on, and
Thanks for the invite.
Thanks, Ian.
until
you
next
guys.
time, y'all.
Talk soon.
All right.
Thank you.
And
Bye.
Bye.